previous panel discussion with the coalition. Wonderful. I hope we don't disappoint and you continue to attend these events after this one. Well, welcome. Anybody else who'd like to say where you're from or how you got here? Maybe one more person? From Malawi, wonderful. I'm so happy you're here. Okay, this is really fun for me to see where all of us are coming from and to see that we're from such different parts of the world, because this really brings home how important and how universal this topic is. So I guess I'll just jump in and maybe more people will be arriving, originally from Peru. Wonderful, Nicole. I hope you understand English. Probably you do, since you're living in Florida. From the Philippines. Oh, amazing. I've never had anybody from the Philippines or from Malawi. And you attended a previous one? Okay. And Sabiti from Uganda, welcome. Amazing. Okay, so without further ado, Jotham, is that how you pronounce it? From Kenya. Beautiful. If you'd like to write, next to your name, you can write where you're from. That would be fun so that everybody can tell, the different parts of the world that you'll be interacting with. You just go to the three dots and the right hand corner on the top and scroll down to rename, and you can add your location. You saw an ad scrolling on Facebook and decided to join. That's a very good reason too. Okay, so we'll get right to it. Let me just open up my presentation, and please feel free to interrupt or interject with questions. I love for our working sessions to be very much a dialogue rather than a monologue. So I'll really welcome any interventions that you want to contribute. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to put it in full screen mode so everybody can see. Can everybody see this? We're looking at a waterfall from Argentina, from my own country. I didn't introduce myself. Maybe you already read a little bit about me. I'll just say a couple of words so as not to take up too much time. My name is Fabiana Fondevila. I'm sorry that it's such a long and difficult name to pronounce for English speakers. We'll find some way around it. And I am a teacher and writer from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I speak English because I lived in the States as a child for a couple of years. But my book, just in case anybody wants to continue to delve into these topics, the book that I already have out in English is called Where Wonder Lives, Practices for Cultivating the Sacred in Your Daily Life, in case you want to go check that out. So, and I've been exploring the subject of vitality. My first book, as the title explicitly states, it was about awe and wonder and the important life-enhancing elixirs that these emotions represent or are. And now for the past few years, I've been exploring the subject of aliveness. So let's dive right in. And I'm going to begin with a story. So bear with me. Way back in time, in my previous incarnation as a journalist, that was like 25 years of my life, I got to travel to Los Angeles to do an interview. I spent the whole trip brainstorming ideas with Ruben, the photographer who accompanied me on the trip, workshopping ideas for capturing the essence of the very peculiar character we were about to meet. We talked nonstop all the way to the door of his house in Beverly Hills, all the way from Buenos Aires. So that was a long time to be talking. It seemed like it was the first story either of us had ever worked on. But today, I think it wasn't so much professional nerves as existential anticipation. We sensed that the meeting would change us forever. Maybe you already recognize this person that we were about to interview. Anybody know this guy? Sorry, the photo is kind of grainy because it's taken from the original paper magazine where it came out. Anybody would want to say who this is? Okay, I see some people trying to write it out, but probably it's too much trouble. So he's called Ray Bradbury. Welcome, came the voice behind the door in a thunderous chuckle. And there he was, Bermudas with suspenders, Easter egg tie, knee-high socks, a snowy mane, and an unmistakable smile. Ray Bradbury, the man who took us to Mars before anyone else, who introduced us to the only fireman who starts fires instead of putting them out, who anticipated the nightmares that technology could create if allied with the worst of the human condition. Ray was 80 years old at the time and had the energy of a child. His workspace was a museum of dinosaurs, hot air balloons, skeletons, models of Mars, and spacecraft. How often do you write? I asked. Every day, he replied. I don't let a week go by without completing a story, an article, an essay, or a poem. God has endowed me with madness. I have no choice. However, that madness asked of him only 2 hours a day. If you're in love, you don't need more, he declared, adding that he never worked a day in his life. It was all play and recreating himself with each story. Every time I finish a book and I put it in the mailbox, I tell death, well, this time you lost. That's me interviewing him, so you know that I'm not making this up a long time ago. So you can probably already imagine why I'm telling you this story about this man to kick off this workshop. Bradbury was, simply put, one of the most vital people I have met in my life. So what do we mean when we say a person is vital? What does vitality consist of? So I'm going to ask you now to write a word or a few words, whatever comes to mind, in the chat box. I'm going to stop here so that I can see your responses. What words come to mind when you think of a vital person? What is a vital person like? How do they act? Important. Okay, let me open the chat box so I can see them. Fresh, important. Okay. Alive, vibration. Someone with energy. Embraces every day. Energetic. Anything else? Alive, fresh, aware, active, energetic. Great. All of these qualities apply. Engaged, beautiful, playful, loving, energy. All of these are very apt terms. Bright, important person. That's interesting, important. I hadn't heard that one before. Being present. Okay, so very good combination. Concerned, okay, hopeful, wonderful. So let's return. And something about connection to nature I saw. So vitality is all of those, let me close this thing, all of these things. But if we have to sum it up, it's a dynamic state of well-being with 4 main ingredients. This comes from a long line of research that I've summed up into these 4 words. Energy, which you already mentioned, enthusiasm, motivation, and connection. Energy, enthusiasm, motivation, and connection. For some people, like Ray, this state is so stable, so frequent, that it constitutes a personality trait. It's not a passing state, it's a trait. People with his level of vitality live life as if it is, an exciting everyday adventure. Now, whatever our average state of vitality is for each of us, we all experience moments of aliveness, right? We all experience moments of aliveness. So on the one hand, science is studying vitality as a personality trait with increasing interest because in recent years, it's been found to be a key factor in immunity. So vital people get sick less, longevity, they live longer, emotional well-being, and thriving relationships. This is true of very vital people. But at the same time, neuroscience affirms that any state, a passing state, that we visit often enough tends to become a trait because neural pathways are formed in the brain that support that state. So it becomes a trait. So how do we create frequent moments of aliveness in order to create vitality as a trait? To explore it, we will focus on the minimal, the smallest expression of vitality, which we will call the living instant or the living moment. The living instant is one in which we feel fully present, porous to what is happening around us, removed for a moment from the thinking mind, close to the body and the heart. In those special moments, time becomes elastic. Sometimes it seems to stop, sometimes it speeds up, more commonly. So we forget who we are, the tasks that await us, the worries that afflict us. These are moments of intimacy with life, of complicity with everything that surrounds us. So again, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, when do you experience moments like this? Without stopping too much to think, please write down in the chat box what comes to mind, or raise your hand and say it out loud. What moments, what are you doing when you experience a moment of full aliveness? I'm going to open up the chat box. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. Dancing, yes. Gardening. Oh. What else? When you're creating art, painting. What else? At the birth or death of someone, yes. Walking in the park, listening to music, making films. Beautiful that you do that. Yes. With my granddad, helping someone I love, outdoor walks, cuddling my cat, lapidary work, sewing or gardening, being aware of the now, cooking. Okay, petting my cat in the past. All right. So that's quite a beautiful bouquet of possibilities, right? So let's see if we can find, going back to our presentation, let's see if we can find now a common thread amongst all of these experiences that you just mentioned. There was quite an array, right? You talked about from petting your cat, being in the garden, to the birth or death of a loved one, to creating art, to being with a loved one. What do you think these experiences might have in common? Anybody? You can just speak out loud. You don't need to raise your hand.
Community sharing.
Community. Okay, so there's a togetherness angle. Yes. What else? Anything else that you notice? Engagement, connection. Right.
Bring joy to your life.
Joy. Right. Flow. Yes, exactly. Now, let me ask you something, because most of the moments that you mentioned quite naturally veer towards the joyful side of life, right? Moments of joy and maybe magic. But also somebody mentioned being at someone's death, which is not exactly joyful, rather quite the opposite. So can you imagine, or can you think of moments in your life that are not particularly joyful or easy or positive, where you also might have felt alive? Can you imagine, can you think back to a moment of great grief, sadness, maybe anger even, or angst, and realize that in those moments, even though they were uncomfortable, you felt alive? Does this sound true for any of you? Yes? Okay,
Yes.
so it's not, so joy is not a condition for these moments to happen. So let's go back to what you were just expressing as a possible thread. You talk about love, you talk about connection, which is almost the same thing. You talk about engagement. So let's go back to the train of thought. Definitely connection, as you all said, and also emotion. And also, can you, okay. Rachel, can you, thank you so much. So in all cases, there's some kind of emotion that predominates. Emotion means energy in motion, and it's the body's response to the things that happen to us, to events inside or outside. And they inform us whether something pleases us or uplifts us or connects us or makes us happy or sad, makes us feel uneasy or calms us. So emotions can be a bridge to vitality if we live them with openness, love, and surrender. If we live them with openness, love, and surrender. Says the writer Andrew Solomon, author of The Demon of Repression. So we could say that he is pretty much at the other end of the spectrum from Bradbury, not particularly a joyful, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Nevertheless, he says, the opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality. And my life, as I write this, is by
You are muted.
okay.
Muted again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, yes.
Okay. Now, yes. Wonderful. Okay. So I was saying that I was repeating the phrase. I imagine you heard the phrase, right? The opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality. And my life, as I write this, is vital even when sad. So let me mention a movie. I'm sorry, but I have to mention this film. It was in theaters, at least in my city, until very recently. I hope it still is in yours, wherever you live. It's a film that's currently playing, which is an exquisite ode to the living moment. It's called Perfect Days by Wim Wenders, the German cinematographer. And the film is particularly moving because Hiroshima, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, the main character, does not live a glamorous or comfortable life, but he lives a rich and full one. I won't say anything else because I don't want to spoil it for everyone. It's important that you see it without any prior information, but I can say that this is not a man with an easy life. Nonetheless, it's a very full, vibrant, alive life. Hirajima's days are not perfect by the demanding standards of our time, but they weave a necklace of instants tinged with wonder and connection and intimacy and love. They are fully alive moments. So our first practice of vitality, we will be exploring two practices today, is getting intimate with our emotions. So the question I'd like to ask you is, which emotions make you uncomfortable? Which emotions do you do your best not to feel? Which emotions make you uncomfortable, or do you try not to feel? And again, I'm going to ask you if you can write them down in the chat. Let's see. Afflictive or difficult emotions: jealousy, shame, anxiety, good, despair, discouragement, anxiety, anger, loneliness, worry. Very good, very good. These insecurity, feelings of inferiority. Okay, these are very good choices, and I'm sure that they resonate with everyone. Fear, resentment, anger, regret, losses. Now, all of these emotions are there for a reason, right? We know this very well. Some of them are not exactly emotions. Being blackmailed is an example of something that creates an emotion in you, probably anger or sadness. But let's look at the emotions themselves, right? Heartbreak, right? So these emotions have their own intelligence, and that's the reason they're there. They're there to alert us to something that needs a response from us. We need to do something about them. If it's anger, we might need to have an argument with somebody, set a boundary, or let somebody know that they've transgressed a boundary that's important to us or done something hurtful. If it's sadness, it's quite probable that we have lost or are about to lose or have lost sometime in the past something that was very dear to us. So it's like the other side of love. It's letting us know that we need to let go, not let go of the love, but let go of that sense of what is not now in its former form, right? Sorry for the repetition. It's not now, we don't have it available as it once was, and there's something that we need to let go through tears, through many expressions of sadness, writing about it, talking about it. So emotions ask something of us. And when we shut the door on them and we say, so to speak, these are, let me use an expression that I heard an author use that I think is a good metaphor. Say that all of our emotions were our children. Our joy, our awe, our wonder, our gratitude, our compassion, our anger, our shame, our loneliness. If these are all our children, because they are creations in a way, they emanate from our being, our personality. But some of them, because they're disagreeable and we don't like to feel them or show them, we lock them up in a basement and we'll say, you be quiet now. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to feel you. I don't want anybody to see you. So there you go off somewhere and be quiet. How do you think those children would react to such a predicament, to such a reaction from their mother, the person who gave birth to them, father? Would they stay down there quietly and not make a fuss? Do you think? No. Anybody that wants to say something, please unmute and just say whatever you want to say. On the other hand, as we were saying, first, if you're moving around, then keep yourself muted so that we can all hear. So I saw, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I don't want to mispronounce it, from South Africa. Would you like to say what you're thinking? And while you're at it, tell us how to pronounce your name.
Okay, so my name is Bronwyn.
Bronwyn, okay.
Yeah, so it's an English name.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never thought of emotions as children, and while you were saying that, I actually had that feeling of like a lost child. being put
Mhm.
in a basement, and I started thinking of like child abuse and neglect and all of that. And you know, those are just one of many issues in the world today that really gets me riled up. And you know, I want to do something about it and change that. So when I started seeing that, I just realized how often I push those children into the basement, and I try
Mhm.
not to feel them. And actually, all they need is a big hug.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So
Right.
I really, wow, that was mind blowing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm really happy to hear that that cause that you just mentioned, which is dear to
Mm,
my heart as well, is something that drives you to action.
mhm,
Love to hear that.
mhm,
And yes, in fact, there is a part of us that unknowingly, not out of any particular mean streak, will tend to repress those childlike emotions that are uncomfortable and we don't know what to do with. That's really what it's about. So when we do, there's a lot of history there attached to those emotions that has already been repressed from a very early age for very good reasons when we were children, because we did not have the resources to do much about them. And maybe it was even dangerous to do something to express certain emotions, such as anger. So it's there, it's happening for a reason. No need to get angry at the fact that we're doing this, right? That would just compound the problem. But since we are adults and we are able now to deal with heavier stuff, it's good time to rethink those attitudes and to see what happens when we tilt the door open to those difficult emotions. And we're going to do a practice shortly to see what happens when we begin to practice. And this is really a practice. It's not something you can do, once and for all. You have to go back and back again. It's because our tendency is always going to be to shush them. So every time we feel them, you go back to doing what we're about to do together. And the reason we're doing this is because we think that we can selectively repress or unchoose or reject certain emotions and raise up the volume on the joy and the laughter and the serenity and all the beautiful emotions. We can't. When we put down one volume, we put them all down because they're part of the same family. So when we deaden a part of our experience, inevitably the other part is not free to thrive and prosper and make itself felt. So part of the reason we're doing this is because these are in fact our children and we owe them that much. And the other part is because when we do let those children out of the basement, they will naturally turn into much more vital and creative forces than what they are, how they're expressing it at the moment. So this might be a lot to cover in one session that we have today, but I hope that the practice will make it clearer. So let's go back to our presentation. So uncomfortable emotions, such as disappointment, shame, fear, anger, jealousy, envy, as well as cognitive states such as uncertainty or confusion, frustration. Sorry, I already mentioned frustration. They generate a fight or flight reaction in us. And so we deny them, repress them, try to distract ourselves from them. As I read this, try to see what your strategy is, your usual strategy. Do you deny, repress, distract yourself? I'm going to go out for a walk and get out of this state. Look for the antidote in another emotion. Okay, I'll see if I can make myself happy by doing something else. Anything but feel them. And by muffling these emotions without realizing it, we distance ourselves from life. This is the key concept. We distance ourselves from the running river that is our life. Instead of doing this, the wise Rilke, the poet, advises, let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Just keep going. No feeling is final. So feeling an uncomfortable emotion, let's just dispel these myths, does not mean that we are crazy, that we are bad people, no matter how angry we get, that we are the only ones who feel these things, or that we need to act accordingly, that we need to go express that anger in a negative manner or in an aggressive or destructive manner. Let me turn off my air conditioning. Okay. So feeling an emotion, whatever it may be, makes us vulnerable and makes us human. That's all it makes us, vulnerable and human. And it connects us with our own life. Being alive is a biological fact, but being fully alive or feeling alive is a state of being. Let me repeat that. Being alive is a biological fact. Being fully alive or feeling fully alive is a state of being. And that state is dynamic and rich in contrasts. The opposite of being fully alive is not being dead, is being half alive, is being asleep or anesthetized or numb or dissociated or armored. The zombie movies, remember the zombie movies that were so popular a while ago? They are probably a reflection of this very fear. And fighting with our emotions does, in fact, make us a little bit zombie-like, right? It's like we're sleepwalking through life at times. On the other hand, feeling them fully, embracing them with love, not with mere acceptance or tolerance, is a great gateway to vitality. So let's do a practice, and then we can see where that takes us. We're going to do a short meditation that is about lovingly embracing our uncomfortable emotions. So make yourself comfortable. You don't need to assume any particular position, but do see if you can feel comfortably supported by your chair or wherever you're sitting. We're going to close our eyes. And start to feel your breath. Don't pay attention to it. Feel it. Feel your breath from the inside out. What is it like to be breathing at this moment? To be exchanging air and oxygen and fresh nutrition with the world? As you take in new breaths of air, perhaps you can see if there's any smells lingering in the air, in the room, that you can pick up. Maybe your own smell of your skin, your lotion. And also see if you can pick up some sounds. Sounds that may be close by in the place where you are, or far away. Someone down the street, some birds, some car rumbling by. And you notice how far away that sound is. And you notice when it begins and when it ends. And you hear the silence in between. Maybe some taste smell. Is there any lingering taste from something you drank or ate before in your mouth? You feel the temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of the clothes you're wearing, the weight of the fabric. The weight of your body on the seat of your feet on the ground, your position. How are you sitting? Are you comfortable? Are there any tense spots? How do you even know you're sitting up? That's another sense that we can explore. And now we go towards a subtler realm and see if you can find any emotions expressing themselves in your body at this moment. Where is it, that emotion that you feel? How do you know you're feeling it? Explore the part of your body where it shows itself. And subtler still, see if you can catch any thoughts going through your mind at this moment. Perhaps you're thinking about this experience we're having or something else. Or perhaps you can also catch the beginning of a thought and the end of a thought, and the space in between. And from this space of centeredness and quiet, let's move towards our heart, as if our consciousness were to go down, down, down from our head, where it usually resides, to our hearts, the very center of our being. You can imagine it as a warm sun in the middle of your chest, or a deep ocean, or a portal that opens to everything. And from that very sacred place, I will ask you now to invite in one of those difficult emotions, the ones that are most difficult to you. Let them show their face as they usually do, and say, welcome, dear, welcome home. And show them in. Let them take a seat beside you. Offer them cake and coffee or tea, something warm to drink, a place of their own. And maybe there's another one at the door now. Go see. And again, open that door wide if it wasn't open already, and show them in and say, welcome home, dear. Welcome home. And see what happens to those emotions as they sit there with their tea and your loving embrace. And let's take our hands to our heart now. Just place them gently on your heart. And feel the aliveness of that beating heart. And feel the aliveness in those emotions and how they don't stay the same, but rather shift and change and transform, even as you look at them. They are so alive because you are so alive that they can't stay the same. And with these hands, offer them some extra love and support. Feel that circle of warmth coming from your heart to your hands and your hands to your heart. And vow to try and keep that door open to each and every part of you. Let no part of you be shunned again. Breathe deeply. Let's take a couple of deeper breaths. 3 breaths. And after the 3rd deep breath, you can interlace your fingers and bring your arms up and stretch for your sides. Maybe let out a yawn, just to let that energy move throughout the body. Maybe roll your neck around, whatever movement you need to do to make before or as we come back to this sacred reunion. And I'd like to ask you now, maybe somebody can answer for the group. I know probably there's many different answers. If you're up for a very short chat in small groups, which are always very precious encounters, but since I don't know where all of you are, perhaps you are in a car or can't. So would you be willing to have to experience a short breakout session so that you can discuss a question that I will pose now amongst yourselves? Maybe you can write down if you're up for it in the chat, or yes. Okay, some people are saying yes, wonderful. So do I create the rooms, Rachel? Yes, I can. Okay, rather not today. Okay, hang around. Okay, let's see if there's more people that cannot, just to see. I don't want to leave too many people out. Can most of you, not me, okay. Ask something, a guideline. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, maybe we can take Nafisa's question and then do the breakout rooms. I think most of you are saying yes. Nafisa, yes, please ask your question.
Am I audible?
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nafisa from Pakistan and I'm 23 years old. And I just want to ask something for my personal life because I was very emotional recently. I just want to tell a very little about myself that I am a neglected child. I have a broken family. My father left us when I was only 8 years old. We have a very poor life, but now I'm 23 years old and I'm student of bachelor's of international relations. So today, currently I'm trying to get a job, to be independent, to live my own life, the life I have always thought about and dreamed about. But my elder brother is very much, suppressing. He's just always like, just do whatever I want you to do. He just don't want to me do the things I ever wanted to do. So currently I want to do a job so that I could get experience within my degree. And after 6 months, when I have my degree in my hand for my bachelor's degree, then I will probably go to an other state for my job. But they won't let me do any job. Like even for a very, I recently I got a job for a career counselor, but they won't let me a job in an office. So for the past 2 days I got a job in school. But the thing is, the things I wanted to do, I have to do all the things in a hidden way. I just want to ask, I can I not have the right to live my life? Am I not a human being who can live according to his will? Or because being an independent girl or a boy, this is my need. So I want you to tell me, or anybody, would you please suggest me what should I do? Because I have regret that I am doing all this in a hidden way, because I want them to enjoy this success of mine after so many hardships with me. I don't have their support. I don't have them with me to enjoy, to live my success. I'm happy, but I'm very sad. I'm just crying all the time because I don't have anyone with me. I've worked very hard. I've got beaten for just to got in the college and university. They are proud of me, but they are just suppressing me. I don't know what they want me to do. I just don't know what should I say. But if anybody
But
can suggest me. I'll be very grateful because I've been going through such a hard time.
Nafisa, that is so moving. That is so incredibly moving. Thank you for your honesty and your courage in speaking up and telling us your story. One thing I didn't understand is you're talking about your mother and your family. Are they the ones who are getting in the way of your choices?
Uh, it's like everyone. I have a brother and
Oh,
mother.
brother. Okay.
Yeah, my
Okay.
mother is kind of supportive, but he's much more supportive to my brother because he's the one who is the bread making of our family, as our father left us. But
Mm-hmm.
they both want me to do something very incredible, but they are
Mm-hmm.
not letting me do, because life cannot be get very much amazing without with shortcuts. I obviously have to do things in a small step, then I can go, like for a
Mm-hmm.
very big job. They want me to earn like in bulk, but in just one step. I don't know how can I make them understand that I have to take small steps first, and then they don't trust me,
Mm-hmm.
but they want me to do a very big thing. I don't know what should I do. I don't know
Yes.
if you're getting my point or not.
Yes, yes, I do, but it's a very complex situation because you're dealing with people who have their own limiting thoughts and conditions and cultural heritage. And
Yeah.
clearly you are a very bright and strong young woman. So what I'd like to say two things, Nafisa. One is I would love to be connected with you beyond this session. So see if you can, so since we don't have each other's contact information, see if you can
I'll be
send,
very grateful because
yeah.
I've been
So
through such bad
so
time.
yeah, I'll tell you two things. First, on a practical level, if you can write an email to Rachel through the GCC, the person that
Okay.
sent you the information, so that she can put us in touch. That's on the
Okay.
one hand. On the other hand, what I'd like to say is, I think you're on the right track by
Okay.
seeking your independence, however you can find it, even in a hidden way for the time
Yeah.
being,
Yeah. Yeah.
until you can make something of yourself. And perhaps you might need to move away for a time, somewhere where you can feel that freedom to thrive. And then from that vantage point, where you are already a person of means and you are doing what you want, and you probably will be making different friends and acquaintances when you are in that situation, you can try and see if you can reestablish, or rather than reestablish, I'm not saying you should break your bonds with your family, but you can see if you can make them understand when that's already something you've already accomplished. It probably will need to be done secretively until then, but do not give up your incredible and very praiseworthy ambitions.
Obviously,
Really,
thank you so much.
you are
I just
meant to
want to
do them.
add that, yeah, I just want to add that this is the culture of, like, third world countries or like brown
Mhm.
families, that we children are not allowed to make our own choices. I am
Mm,
23. They consider that I am mature enough to get married, to have children, to run a proper family, but they don't consider me that I can make the right choices for my education, for my job, for my,
mm,
relationships, or anything else. I just
mm,
want to know if I am mature enough to be called as a human being, as a woman, or I'm still a girl. Some
right.
In some
Well,
cases they are placing me in the age group where I'm just considered as very immature and
mm,
and poor, and I don't know, I cannot go anywhere independently. I just have to take anyone with me, uh,
yeah,
and somewhere they are considering me that I am the very much mature and I have to do everything on my own, and they uh, expect
yeah.
a lot from me. I cannot speak right
Yeah,
now. I don't know
I
how can
understand.
I explain all the situations.
Yes, I understand. I understand. And it sounds like a really difficult situation. So what I'd like to
Yeah.
say is let's take this up on our own later in a conversation, because it's going to take a little bit more than what I can say now. But I
Yeah.
do appreciate and want to reflect back to you that you are clearly an adult and very strong woman with very interesting and um, worthy goals. So do not give that up. That is sacred. That is beyond question. Then you can see how you can handle your relationship with your family. That is a different question. I understand you have a difficult family and a difficult cultural heritage to face up to. That has nothing to do with your, shall I say, destiny or um, great possibilities as a person. That is something you cannot even question, okay? So let's talk again privately. Shall we do that? Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you for speaking up. I really appreciate it. So I'm thinking now that because not everybody can join the breakout groups, maybe we can do this all together. But I do want you all to participate, otherwise it's not going to be as interesting. So from what we just did, that little meditation about embracing our emotions, could somebody maybe tell us how you felt? What went on there when you faced that your own personal difficult emotion? How did you feel when you embraced it, when you asked it to come home? And can you imagine yourself doing this in your everyday life? A lot of rage and grief, says Amy. And how did it feel when you connected with that rage and grief and invited it into your heart? Could you say? You can unmute and tell us out loud. It'd be interesting to exchange a few words. Maybe you'd rather do it privately. Anybody else who could share?
I think that the tears of the grief are too close to the surface for me to articulate.
So
I can try and talk in the chat.
okay, but okay, yeah, maybe you can answer me in the chat. My question was or is, what happened once you invited them in? Did they stay exactly the same? Did anything soften or change in any way?
I can definitely say that,
Okay.
you know, when I first invited them in, they were very ugly and spiky and visceral. And, you know, eventually they changed into kind of soft and fluffy. So it was actually a very interesting exercise to do. I've never tried that before, and it was quite effective. Yeah.
I love the way you describe it, from spiky and
Yeah.
to fluffy. And yes, I can definitely relate to that. Thank you, Bronwyn. Julieta?
Gracias. Thank you. So when you said that our feelings and emotions are our children, and then after doing the meditation, a week ago I had an accident, and a couple of months before, in both accidents, I was hit by someone, and I've been feeling anxious. And as I was doing the meditation, I reflected on my drive home yesterday. But then the connection and I know that our feelings are messengers that are there to tell us something. I was able to become more at ease with it. I will drive as soon as we finish, just to feel and experience it. I feel that is the way for me to address this emotion. I love driving. I love to venture. And I have been feeling apprehensive, even though after the accident, I continue driving and I have continued, but I am becoming aware of that sensation. And I feel that the meditation that you guided us through will be helpful as I am driving to become befriending that emotion or that anxiety that is showing up for me. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Julieta, for sharing that. Anxiety is another word for fear. It's a kind of more diffuse fear, and fear is a very vital emotion. In fact, it's one of our most vital emotions because it's pretty much the one that keeps us alive on its own by showing its face whenever something dangerous appears in our life. So if instead of shunning fear, we befriend it and we begin to ask it, so what is it here that makes me afraid? What do you think could happen? You know, there's different ways, there's different practices that I will be sharing in my classes throughout the year. I'll tell you about that a little bit at the end. But just as a general rule, if something is making you afraid, the worst thing you can do is negate that fear and say, okay, no, there's no reason. There's no reason. There's always a reason. Sometimes that reason is actually quite noteworthy because there's something you need to pay attention to. And sometimes it's just a remnant, something that's left behind from something that happened or that you experienced as in your crash. But nonetheless, you need to process and digest those feelings. You can't just let them, leave them out the door. And the more you embrace them and let them express themselves, there's many ways to do this, the more they will quiet down and not be a problem when you're driving. I'm sure of that. So thank you again for sharing that. Let me read, and then we'll go to Natalie, but I want to read this from Hiromi. I feel like when we suppress our negative emotions, we assume the idea that they have power over us, hence the need not to face them. But when we address them, we become suddenly in charge. We realize that we are capable of experiencing a wide range of emotions outside the positive emotions. That's very interesting, Hiromi. I will suggest, and this is a little pet peeve of mine, not to call them negative emotions. Let's call them uncomfortable or afflictive. Afflictive means suffering. They do cause suffering, that's undeniable, but they're not negative because they have a role to play. And also, I would suggest or invite you to rethink the idea of being in charge. I understand what you're saying, and I'm glad that you felt more at ease or powerful, but the power comes from the emotions, not from our dominion over our emotions. That lifeblood, that's what they are. They're telling us what's going on in our relationship with the world. They're telling us how much everything matters to us. It matters to me that I lost somebody I love. It matters to me that somebody did something unfair, unjust, or cruel. It matters to me that someone's being disrespected. All of these things that matter to me are speaking to me for a reason. So it's not so much a question of, gaining domain over them, but of letting them speak, giving them a place at the table. And it's true, to use a different metaphor, the Knights of King Arthur's Table, am I saying it right? That, imagine a castle or any kind of castle where you have all these people around the table that are important to that particular kingdom. And you have the court jester and the wise one and the seer, and you have the king and the queen, right? And they're sitting at the head of the table. We could speak about the feminine and masculine, but that would be too much detail for now. But those are sort of the adults in charge. So in that sense, yes, there is an adult in charge that will tell the fear, for example, well, now you cannot express yourself too much because now we have to take the exam or we have to, whatever it is that you need to do. But they do need to have their voice heard. They are part of the family and they need to feel that. So just suggesting a change of wording instead of in charge of, I am in contact with them. I am in relationship with them. So that's why they're not a threat. Yes, Natalie.
Sorry, I was just trying to mute. Hello, I'm in Canada, and I just want to say thank you for hosting this today as well. So I when I was thinking about the emotions, invite them in, they were actually, I don't know why my brain went to this, but I imagined little versions of myself of different ages when I was a child. So like being kind of really young and some like, tweenage or teenager, like I imagine different versions of myself when those emotions kind of maybe were very, when I started suppressing those emotions, like maybe I don't know. So yeah, I found that kind of interesting because I didn't expect that, but it just came up.
That is super interesting, Natalie. Thank you for sharing that. In fact, that is exactly the way it is. A lot of these emotions are very young in age, and there's different disciplines that work with that particular approach. One is called IFS. Maybe somebody's heard of Internal Family System by Richard Schwartz. It's a method of dialoguing, of connecting with those voices as if they were people inside us, and they are. It's a whole other ballgame, but we can relate to them as emotions, or we can relate to them as specific parts of us that appeared in our life at a specific point. And so that's IFS is just one. Then there's voice dialogue and all kinds of therapies and disciplines that have specialized in relating to those different aspects of us, but they are certainly different ages. So I'm very happy to hear that that's how they turned up. That's very wise of you. And it's also easier, I think, to let in a 10-year-old shame or jealousy or, lonely part of us than just to let in loneliness or shame, right? So that's probably also wise of your psyche to bring them in that form.
Yeah, it almost made me feel more like empathy for myself.
course.
Yeah,
Of
that's
course.
amazing that you said that. Thank you.
That's exactly right. And the part of us, I mentioned the king and queen, which is one metaphor, but we could also think of our self with capital S, or our soul or our spirit, whatever speaks to you, as the part of us that is not a part, but rather it's our essence. But that essence has a particular attitude towards our emotions and feelings. It's the part of us, sorry, I keep saying part of us, but it's not. It's the essence of us that has the strength and the eternal wisdom to let them in and to relate to them. And it's interesting because, just to tell a little anecdote, when Dick Schwartz, the creator of this discipline I mentioned, IFS, he arrived at this conclusion by talking to so many patients and asking to talk to their parts. Can I speak to, fearful Natalie? Can I speak to angry Martin? And at some point, some other voice would come in and he would ask, what part is that? And people would inevitably say, that's not a part. I think that's just me. And that just me, that self, was always calm and connected and compassionate. That's also partly why we're having this talk today in the framework of the Global Compassion Coalition. It's a very compassionate aspect of ourselves. And the way we connect to that self is by allowing these other emotions. It's not by bypassing them or denying them. It's counterintuitive, but that's how it works. Martin says they were different faces of myself in different emotional moments, difficult ones. We joined all together around the table. That's beautiful. I love that you were able to find them, around the table as the image that we just shared. So before we move on to another practice, would anybody else like to share how you felt by allowing these emotions in? Was there resistance? Did anybody have trouble opening the door and offering tea? That might have happened too, might have happened as well. So feel free to share any reactions, because this is not familiar for everybody as a practice. But I will recommend strongly that as we move forward, whenever an emotion that is difficult comes up, you give yourself a moment to give it a name, to say, okay, I think I'm feeling sad. I think this is anger. I'm feeling it. And, you can probably relate it to a specific feeling in your body. It's the best way to tell what it is you're feeling. If you ask yourself, for example, how do I know I'm sad? I'm going to ask you, when you're sad, how do you know you're sad? Can anybody answer? How would you answer that question? I know I'm sad because 3 dots. Annie?
My energy level go down.
Oh, your energy level goes down, says Julieta. Annie, were you going to say something?
I'm feeling in here,
You're
kind of a burden
feeling a burden. That's the exact word.
in my body.
Yes, exactly. So the word that Annie is used is very precise, because if you connect now to the feeling of sadness, you will probably notice that there's something that's driving you down. In fact, Julieta also used the word, my energy level goes down. But when I mean down, I mean literally down. Something is dragging my body in a downward motion or orientation. What happens with the shoulders? What happens with the corners of the eyes and of the mouth? Everything goes down in sadness. Why do you think that is? I'm asking us to play at being psychologists for a moment. What happens when we're very sad? Eventually, what happens?
Even my breathing becomes shallow.
Yes. Shallow, think again. Take notice. Does it become shallow or does it become like heavier? See
Right.
if you can find the precise expression of that breathing. It changes. It definitely changes. But what is the eventual, or not always, but often, what ends up happening when we're sad? What's the physical reaction to sadness that most of us have? Can anybody say?
Is it crying?
Yes, exactly. Tears, crying. So what happens is that thing that is heavy, that loss that we are having trouble letting go of, that thing that is feeling like it's ended, or it's no longer what it was, or it's, the different variations of loss, is asking to be released. And tears are a form of release. And in fact, if we think about it on spiritual terms, there's a river of loss that runs through humanity. There is not a single person alive today that has not felt some kind of loss. And we are always contributing our own tears to that river of loss. When you don't feel like doing anything, yes, sometimes that's sadness, sometimes that's depression, which is not exactly the same as sadness. Depression is more a suppression of feeling, when things are just too hard to handle and there's a suppression of feeling. But sadness is a dynamic emotion, and it calls to us to do something with it, which is mostly letting go of something. When we cry, what's on the other side of tears? What emotion comes after we cry? Could anybody say?
Relief.
Exactly. There's relief, there's calm, there's sometimes even joy after a good cry. So that is a very clear and short expression of what emotions are meant to do in our bodies. They're meant to flow. They're meant to move on and continue and become something else, if and only if and when we give them their rightful place. We accept them, we embrace them, we are loving towards them, and we ask, what do you need from me? Maybe I need to go and let myself cry. And if the tears aren't coming, listen to sad music and they'll come. Everybody knows what it will do for you. So emotions are energy in motion. They are aliveness as we speak. And it's not, we have other parts of us aside from emotion, but this is a very vital aspect of our experience in life. And when we suppress it all together. So if you're feeling apathetic, let me make just one more distinction between depression and sadness, which I think is important. Depression tends to isolate you and let you or make you stay in bed without doing anything, whereas sadness connects you and you tend to look for a shoulder to cry on, somebody to speak with. So it's a more dynamic and healthier expression. So see if when you're feeling sort of isolated and alone, find a way to break that isolation, and maybe you can move that depression into sadness, which will allow the emotion to pass, right? So as you can see, this is a very rich and complex topic, but I want to move on to a second practice that I'd like to share with you today, which is engaging in novelty and risk. So one of the reasons, sorry for the swift change, but I just noticed the time and I want to also be able to share this. One of the reasons so many people love to travel is because during a trip, everything is new and exciting and stimulating, right? And our brains are very complex systems that way. On the one hand, the amygdala, which is a very tiny structure in the center of our brain and one of the oldest structures in our brain, is always alert to detect changes that could represent threats to our survival, to our bodily integrity. In that sense, we could say that the brain is kind of conservative and somewhat reluctant to change, right? For fear that something might destabilize us. But at the same time, it rewards our explorations with dopamine, this neurotransmitter that we're talking so much about these days, because they may lead to new resources and learning. So if you think of our distant ancestors, they needed to be able to be proactive in looking out for new places to find food and new places where they could live, or be proactive in knowing where the possibly dangerous rivals were. So especially the men who were in charge of that, they had to be explorers, they had to be adventurers. They couldn't sit at home and just say, okay, well, the food will find us. No. So we do have that very pleasant feeling dopamine hit when we do something novel, something a little bit risky and adventurous. That feels good when it's a calculated risk and it's a meaningful risk. When undertaking a new activity or pursuing a new goal or approaching someone we don't know, that dopamine invigorates the body and mind and brings us a taste of adventure. And this is particularly so when a risk we take is meaningful to us. So it's not a question of going to jump off a plane if that's not interesting to us, parachuting or whatever, but doing something that will bring us value. Now, if we shy away from risk in favor of safety, something in us withers. And I'm going to quote the beautiful and brave Helen Keller. She said, "Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Security does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than exposure." That's for Julieta in her next car ride. So this risk that we choose to face doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be a life or death situation or even a large or enormous risk. They can be emotional, social, spiritual, vocational risks, and they can be small and everyday ventures. So I'm going to mention some examples, and as I do, please think what these situations bring to you. If they make your heart race a little bit more or create a little bit of tension for you. Telling an uncomfortable truth. Well, no life at risk, but telling an uncomfortable truth. Setting boundaries, saying, don't do that. This is not good, not acceptable. Asking for forgiveness when one has transgressed. Asking for help. Speaking in public. Holding space for someone to grieve. Dressing in an unusual way, deciding that we're going to wear something we never wore before. Calling someone instead of texting. Disappointing someone to be true to yourself. Now, some of these actions will be simple for some people and frightening for others and vice versa. But taking small steps in the direction of courage, courage means feeling fear and doing it anyway, not having no fear, feeling fear and doing it anyway, along with your fear, hand by hand, strengthens our vitality and makes the world feel less alien and threatening. That's why this is another such an important practice of aliveness, exercising courage, embracing risk and the unknown. So what I want to do now is ask you to answer 2 questions. And let's see if we can do the breakouts, maybe even just for 10 minutes, but I think it's a rich experience. I don't want you to miss out on it. These are the 2 questions. What risks did I take or have I taken in the past that enlivened me? Can I identify a risk that I took that enlivened me? And what risk could I take today that would enliven me? And maybe it's one of those small risks, okay? Not changing jobs necessarily or anything huge, but do I need to speak to somebody that I've been avoiding? Do I need to ask somebody to forgive me? Do I need to speak in public? Any of those will do, and more than do. So let's give it a go. Let's give it a try. I'm going to create even just a short time. Let's see if we can. Okay, let's do it like this. And oh my goodness. Okay, just 10 minutes then, because I don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time. I don't want to go too much beyond our assigned time. So see if you can all make it. And if you can't, we can stop recording now for this time. Rachel, please. Maybe only 2 people will get to speak, and that'll be enough. Anybody that can't, please have courage and speak out in the big group, because that's the way we have to do it today. Could anybody think, maybe you already gave it some thought, maybe you can think about it now, of a change or risk you took in your life that turned out to be vitalizing and enlivening? Any examples come to mind that you could share? Something that you did in your life that was scary at the time, but turned out to be enlivening. Anything come to mind? It could be a small thing. It doesn't need to be huge.
When I was little, I was really shy and painfully shy, and I joined a choir and discovered that I really like singing and kind of acting. And so I pushed myself to do drama, even though it wasn't like an innate feeling, but it really served me in my life being more kind of confident. So when I talk to people, and it did help.
Beautiful. That's an incredible example. So it could be along those lines, something I always wanted to do, and it was hard for me, and I finally did it, and it proved to be enlivening. Flor?
Hi, Fabi. In my case, it was taking kayaking lessons. I had been terrified up to that point, most of my life, that if I ever went on a kayak, it would turn upside down and then I wouldn't know how to get out and I would drown. And this was during a time when I lived near many beautiful lakes in Canada. So I thought, I can't be so silly. I have to do something about this fear. And then being out in nature, it felt like I felt so brave. I mean, it was something really simple, but it made a big difference.
Oh, I imagine, and especially knowing the kinds of lakes and views that you had there. Of course, how could you miss that? Beautiful. So courage can be physical, like in physical, social, like in these two examples. But of course, there can be, as we said before, emotional experiences or emotional risks that you may have taken. Annie, anything come to mind?
You mentioned those in your slide before, but it resonates with me. And it resonates with the first part of your workshop. I felt alive when I was bold enough to share my feelings, whether they were positive or negative, or you don't like that. How do you call it?
Afflictive, right.
Yes, in both those cases, I felt alive. Being brave enough to share that I love someone and express my love, or being bold and share that I'm angry with someone, and this made me feel alive.
That's a beautiful example, Annie. Thank you so much. And I especially like the way you framed it. Both those apparent extremes, but they're not, they're just a part of life. Expressing love can be the most vulnerable feeling of all. And saying the first to say, I love you, oof, we all know how difficult that can be. And even just saying, I mean, one of the most vulnerable feelings is telling someone, it's not even in romantic love, you know, I'd love to be your friend. I like you. I want to be your friend. We used to do this in school all the time. It wasn't so difficult then. But as we grow older and more armored, it seems to become more and more difficult. So that's a huge one. And of course, expressing difficult emotions, which is difficult for a reason. So those are all excellent examples of what you've done in the past. Would anybody be bold enough to say one risk that might be worth taking today? Of course, this was easier in small groups, but maybe somebody can think of an example.
I had two awesome ladies in my group, and unfortunately we were not able to share. And I share about driving back right after the accident. But then as the last person that shared, I always wanted to skydive, and nobody in my family wanted to do it. And for my 50th birthday, my daughter bought 2 tickets for us to go, and we did it. And when we were in the plane, she jumped first, and the fear that came over me that something could have happened to my daughter. And that was my first thing, because we escaped the house without letting anyone that we were doing it, because everybody was against it. And when I jumped, just the fear, but then letting it go, and thank God the guy that was holding my body said, no, there she is. Oh my God, I became so alive. But not only that, what a beautiful view, what a feeling. And I am very grateful that I did it. And I feel that after that, I have become more daredevil, like daring to do things that even though when I am uncomfortable, I remember a quote that is said, you will regret the things that you didn't do, not the things that you did. And that is a motto for me to move forward. So, yeah.
Amazing. And you sound like a very brave and daring woman. So kudos. Good on you. Yes, definitely taking risks of social, emotional, or any other kind makes us alive, keeps us alive, and it's also contagious. So it's a gift we give to the world. So that's why this second practice is all about taking meaningful risks, not just any risk for the sake of running a risk, but something that we know, for example, the choir practice or learning a new language or befriending somebody that looks interesting. If we perceive that there's going to be some real value there, then we get what I like to call high quality dopamine. Because you may have heard the expression cheap dopamine. Cheap dopamine means that any kind of search or novelty. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that comes as a result of looking for it, trying to get something. So it's not the actual experiencing it as much as the getting it. And as you probably have heard, social media is very much based on giving us very easy and frequent hits of dopamine because it's always changing and presenting new, whatever it is. And so we get this very slight and ineffective dopamine. So we feel like we've been experiencing things for half an hour, and of course, nothing has happened. And we're exactly the same as before we started scrolling. So instead of going for the cheap dopamine, I'm not saying you can't use, Instagram or whatever else you use, but we do need to go for the serious dopamine, the kind that creates change inside and creates a habit of courage and vitality as a result. So that's why this second practice is one I especially recommend. And let me go back to the presentation because I think I have my poem now. Yes, you may be familiar with this poem. It's not, it's a well-known poem, but it just had to be this one for this particular workshop. It's called I Will Not Die an Unlived Life. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that which came to me as a seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as a fruit. As fruit. So maybe we can just take a moment with this beautiful poem, because you're going to need to read it a couple of times, as poems do ask of us. And maybe you can just say out loud a phrase that you'd like to keep from this poem, what you'd like to make yours. Just say them out loud because I can't read the chat now. Just unmute. What line or phrase is your take-home message?
I choose to risk my significance.
Beautiful. That's my favorite too. Beautiful. What else?
To inhabit my days.
Inhabit my days.
To loosen my heart until it becomes a wing.
Great one.
I will not live in fear.
Beautiful, Amy. Yes. Love that one too.
To allow my living to open me.
Yes. Lovely.
Until
Lovely.
it becomes a wing.
We can write down these lines, right? And keep them handy so that we see them often and they remind us of these very important intentions. Because we could say many things about life. We want to be happy, we want to be, successful, we want to be creative. But one thing we all want is to be alive, to be all of those things, right? Sorry, Joseph, were you going to say something maybe? Unmute.
About I will not live in fear. Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm hoping as we bring this workshop to a close, but bear with me a few minutes more because I have something else to share. But as we bring this part of the workshop to a close, I really hope that you will take this practice to your everyday life and maybe the poem as a good reminder that you can be a little courageous, and that little bit of courage brings a little bit of aliveness, and days full of embraced emotions and little risks make eventually for life a very vibrant aliveness. So I really hope you'll take me up on this dare, on this suggestion, and on this dare. And before we part and we say goodbye, there's an invitation. And this is an invitation to my course, which begins shortly, which is called Sings the River, Living with Courage and Aliveness. So I'll very briefly tell you what it's about, just in case you want to know more. It's called, as I said, Sings the River, and it will lead us to explore 10 archetypes of vitality. Just in case nobody's heard of the word archetype, an archetype is a pattern that dwells or lives in the collective unconscious and that drives impulses and energy and emotions. It's a driver of behavior. And in this year-long course, which begins now in March, we'll be focusing on one archetype at a time. And by appealing to our mythic imagination, We'll spend a month living from within each archetype, seeing the world, our lives, and each other through their particular outlook and gifts and resources. So I'll share with you what this wheel of archetypes looks like. And it's too much to take in now, but I'll just briefly mention one by one so you get at least a feel for them. The first one is called Cosmonaut, living in infinity. It's the part of us that likes and knows how to live in infinity. So this is one session per month, right? One Saturday of each month. The second will be delving into our wild ones. And that's the part of us that likes to and knows how to live in freedom and authenticity. And then we will contact our inner adventurers. That has everything to do with what we just briefly looked into, how to live with risk. And then the mystic part of us, that is the part that likes to and knows how to live in full presence, forest resistance. And then, of course, we will contact our heroic nature. That has everything to do with proactiveness and courage to change the things we need to change in our lives and in the world. And then the dancer in us. The dancer is the part of us that lives sensuously in our bodies. And then our children, our inner children, which has everything to do with living with delight and joy and lightness. And the creative part, our inner creators, which are the aspects of us that knows how to mold the world, change the world through the use of our imagination. And our wise ones, that is sort of the part that keeps the river in its course, the part of us that knows how to live with humility and receptivity and connection. And finally, we will come to our inner lover, our lovers, and that is the part of us that knows how to live in love. And when I'm saying in love, I don't mean just with love, but in love, as in when we fall in love, that part of it, that part of us. So that's the course in very short, in a few short words. And if you'd like to know more, you will receive the recording from the session and the presentation. So you will also have the places where you can contact me or just join us in this group. We have some of our students from previous years are here today, and I'm really grateful to have them on. And we stay in touch throughout the year, even in between sessions with a chat group. So you'll of course be welcome to join that chat group as well and be part of our little community. So whether we meet on this particular journey of aliveness or not, I do wish you all a year with boundless awe and surrender and aliveness. May we hear the river sing always. And I would love to finish maybe with a word that, just so that I don't end up speaking alone, maybe just unmute and say a word that we can say goodbye that way. What will you take from this session?
Joy.
Joy. Thank you.
I have a couple of words. If I think my main word is,
Yes.
word is embrace. And I think I came to this thinking, associating the word aliveness with like an erotic aliveness in a sense. And so it's been really grounding to just remember that aliveness is associated with embracing all of the emotions.
All of them, including the erotic ones, of course. We will definitely be going into that in the course, but yes, it's a much wider and much more grounded approach. Thank you. I'm so happy that you got that that twist. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else? Words?
Fabiana, I am living filled with gratitude. Thank you for this awesome time, and I'm so happy you offering the course because I can't wait to start it. Oh my goodness, it has been an awesome time being with you. I love the way you lead us from the beginning to now. Thank you. I also want to thank you for taking on Nafisa. I became very concerned as she was sharing for safety first. Please, safety first. May you be well. I can't wait to meet you again. Thank you.
So beautiful, Julieta. I'm overjoyed that we'll be sharing this journey. You are such a lovely person. Thank you. More words, maybe you can just write them in the chat if you prefer, or say them. Oh, I'm sorry. I see there's messages I'm not reading. Okay, gratitude, joy, appreciation. Thank you, Mar. That's beautiful. Any other words? Maybe a couple words more that we can take home, all of us?
I feel a
Yes.
sense of community, a sense of belonging, that we are not
Mm.
alone. We all have those emotions. Thank you.
Absolutely. That is our common inheritance and lifeblood. Beautifully put, Bronwyn. Thank you. Okay, and the card.
Vitality.
Yes. Overcome. Beautiful, Venya. Openness, the courage to be vulnerable. Beautiful too. I really enjoy reading you, so I'm being greedy, reading more and more. Integration, feeling safe here. Oh, Nafisa, how lovely to hear that. And we will definitely be in touch. Definitely be in touch. So just to be respectful of our time, we're going to close here. Thank you, Rachel, for your beautiful facilitation and help. And do follow and stay close to the Global Compassion Coalition. They are doing amazing and very necessary work. And we need all of you by our sides. So we'll meet again, I'm sure. Thank you so much for this time together. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Be well, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.